Today is March 25th, 2016. And if you're hearing this much later, it means that everything has somehow worked out. Or not. It's not for me to judge. Okay, let's get down to business. I'm 32, originally a programmer, although I'm more of a web monkey. Right now, I'm a chimney sweep at DS. Yes, I'm not kidding. A real chimney sweep. The real deal. Usually, people's eyes widen and they say, "Are there still people like that?" Yes, there are. I got into this profession by accident. 3 years ago, the micro studio where we outsourced business process automation for various companies, factories, and online stores on Drupal and WordPress, where would we be without them, went under. The crisis hit, and you know how it is. Naively, I looked for a job as an industrial climber. I wanted to climb walls like a spider, but ended up in pipes. I won't name the company here. There aren't many places like that in the DS. They'd find me in no time. There are only 9 of us, 3 teams of 2, the boss, a pretty decent guy, an accountant, and another guy, either a deputy or a secretary, who knows. He dresses smartly, is always on the phone, looking for clients, and manages social media. Seems useful. We always have enough work. We install and maintain chimneys for fireplaces and boilers, ventilation systems in offices, huge coils in shopping centers, and, of course, we clean chimneys. Keep your jokes about chimneys to yourself. They haven't been funny for 10 years. But the bulk of our orders are for cleaning ventilation ducts in prefabricated buildings. What do we use to clean them? Oh, you should see what they turn into, especially in houses built in the 60s and 80s. In some stairwells, there are deposits that would make your mother cry. And in public catering establishments, let's just say that the ventilation there looks like a living organism that gave up long ago. A man came to us with a complaint. He said that something was knocking in the wall, and it wasn't just tapping, but intermittent, as if someone was living there. At first, we thought it was the neighbors making noise, which happens sometimes. But no, the neighbors were away, and the knocking continued, especially at night, when the house was quiet. Just so you understand, a ventilation duct is not just a pipe in the wall. It is a full-fledged vertical shaft that runs through the entire stairwell, from the basement to the roof. It ends with those little houses you've seen on the roofs of prefabricated buildings. Depending on the series of the house, there may be additional side branches. Separate ducts for the kitchen and bathroom. The material is concrete or sheet metal. In the apartment, it is sometimes visible as a protruding distribution box on the wall. Narrow pipes run from it to the rooms. The duct runs through all floors and, as a rule, is shared. And what people do with it? Some people install an extractor fan so that all the cooking smells go up to the neighbors 3 floors above. Some lay wires. Some install some kind of incomprehensible valves or shut-off valves. Some even dismantle part of the duct to squeeze in a boiler or dryer. Sometimes they just fill it with rubbish, like a grave. In short, there is a whole shadow infrastructure behind your wall that almost no one ever sees. It is always drafty and smells of musty damp. So, the client told me that his wife and son started complaining about strange noises, as if someone was scratching the wall from the bathroom at night. Their bathroom is separate, and the knocking was clearly coming from the toilet. His son even asked, "Dad, who's behind the wall?" It got to the point where the child became afraid at night and ran to their bed. The man ended up tapping on the wall himself and realized that the sound was coming from the ventilation duct. He found us and called us. I went to the initial inspection. Actually, according to safety regulations, there should be at least 2 people in the team. Otherwise, if something happens, we'll be in trouble and could lose our license. but the initial inspection can be done by one person, especially if it's just a visual check. I arrived, talked to the man, listened to him, went up to the attic, got the key from the housing association, signed the paperwork as required. I laid out my equipment on the roof, a reel with a video cable and a camera, a laptop, and a cable with a weight so that I could clean it out if necessary. Everything was as usual. The building turned out to be a 12-story prefabricated concrete structure, a classic example of Soviet architecture. I ran the cable, smoked, and glanced at the screen. The camera showed the usual: gray concrete, slightly dusty, visible for about 2 meters ahead, then darkness. At first, everything went fine, but when I started going down and reached the 7th floor, where the client lived, I noticed something strange. Some kind of blackish-brown slime with growths appeared on one of the walls of the shaft. It wasn't ordinary dust or dirt from the exhaust fans that trap grease and soot. No. It looked like moldy stalactites hanging in thick slime. They glistened in the LED light as if they were wet. And the lower I lowered the camera, the thicker this vegetation became. Branchy, loose, disgustingly alive. I turned the camera and looked more closely. This filth was growing on the wall bordering the client's apartment. The monochrome image did not convey color, but the shades made it clear that it was something unhealthy, possibly fungal, something that would warrant calling the health department. I stopped at exactly the 7th floor, my attention fixed on the monitor. But there were no foreign objects in the shaft. Nothing was dangling or banging against the walls, just this disgusting coating. I thought then, what if this filth is spreading spores throughout the shaft? What if it's all floating in the air? This is a building with several hundred people living in it. I was about to go back up when I suddenly noticed something. In the wall of the shaft, closer to the client's apartment, there were deep dents and scratches among the mold, as if someone had been poking at it with a sharp object. In some places, the reinforcement was exposed, and the holes were 5 to 6 centimeters deep. This was no joke. It looked like someone had tried to break through the wall. That's when I felt a twinge in my stomach for the first time. It wasn't fear. No, I'm not superstitious. It was just a feeling that something wasn't right. Could the builders have poured the concrete so poorly back in the day? Or is one of the residents downstairs conducting some kind of fungal experiment in the basement? I decided to get to the bottom of it. The cable allowed me to go all the way down. And here's what's curious. On the 5th floor, mold already covered all the walls in a continuous layer. There was so much of it that I had to carefully guide the wire so as not to get it dirty. On the 3rd floor, that's where it started. At the edge of the camera's field of vision, in the thick darkness of the concrete shaft, a face suddenly appeared. White, eyeless, like a plaster mask. It didn't move. It just stared. At the screen. At me. It was like a porcelain mask, completely motionless, dead, staring lifelessly straight into the camera lens. It didn't move, blink, or flicker like dust or cobwebs. She just stared. Where her eyes should have been, there were black, deep, sunken voids, completely devoid of light, as if there was nothing behind them, not even the walls of the mine. Surprised, I let go of the cable for a moment, and it immediately slid down a meter or so under its own weight. The image on the monitor flickered, jerked, and jumped forward, straight toward that pale, absurd face. But even up close, nothing new was revealed. The same frozen mask, surrounded by a hopeless, sticky darkness. Choking on panic, I grabbed the cable, trying to regain control. But the image didn't stop. The face began to approach on its own. It was moving. Slowly but surely. And damn it, it was following the camera. It wasn't the image that jumped. It crawled upward. Cursing not so much out of anger as out of horror, I began to hastily pull out the cable, feverishly glancing at the screen, where the white face would disappear into the darkness, then reappear frighteningly close. My whole back was drenched in cold, sticky sweat, as if I had stepped out of an ice-cold shower. I felt nauseous, not from the movement of the camera, but from fear. I swear I wasn't imagining things. A faint, wet, intermittent sound came from the ventilation shaft. A rustling, a sloshing. It was crawling there. It was there, alive. No longer cursing, but whimpering like a cornered dog, I stepped on the cord on autopilot to secure it, leaned over, lifted the weight with difficulty. My hands were shaking, and threw it into the shaft with all my strength. There was a soft, sticky thud, as if I had thrown a bag of meat into a swamp. The cable immediately began to unravel on its own, which meant I had hit it. I had hit that creature. And you know it didn't make a sound. No squeal, no moan, nothing. Just sudden silence, eerie, like in a morgue. The rustling disappeared. The sloshing stopped. I just stood there for a while, staring blankly at the monitor, until I realized I had to pull the camera out. The cable seemed endless. My arms ached. But finally, a grayish void appeared on the screen. And then, daylight. The camera flew out. I jerked it sharply, lost my balance, and slammed my back into the railing. I almost fell, but I held on. By a thread. I pulled out the weight. It was covered in disgusting black gunk. Sticky, smelly, like used motor oil, only thicker. The ramrod looked the same. Shuddering as if from an electric shock, I began to quickly and frantically throw everything into my bag. The ramrod, the weight, the cable. I didn't bother to wipe them off, just rubbed them on my pants and the roof of the car. That was it. Let's get out of here. I ran away. I drove straight home. I drove like a madman. Somewhere I missed a turn, hit the curb, and cracked the bumper. I didn't care. The car was mine, not the office's. At home, I tore off my uniform, threw it in the trash, turned on the hot water in the shower, and scrubbed myself with a brush until I was red. I felt like if even a drop of that slime was left on me, it would find me. It would find me by the smell. I called the office. I said I was sick. I mumbled that I hadn't seen anything and would have to go back out. In the evening, I picked up my daughter from school, fed her, and sent her to bed early. I took some vodka out of the freezer and drank almost half of it. I fell asleep like a log. In the morning, I woke up with a pounding headache. I spent the whole next day just sitting at home and thinking. The image of that face wouldn't leave my mind. That jerk from work called. He said he had scheduled me for the next trip. There was work to be finished. Same house. Same guy. He said everything had been paid for. The client was in a hurry. I replied, "Okay, I'll go tomorrow." But in the evening, I picked up my daughter from school and didn't say a word. I stared at her for a long time over dinner. I know what I saw. It wasn't a delusion. It wasn't my imagination. I wasn't tired. I know what I saw. But I need the money. Work is bad. My daughter is little. She's the only one I have. And I'm no Rockefeller. I reassured myself. It's not so bad with my partner. We'll take a look until 7 and then leave. If we don't find anything, so be it. I had another drink, so I wouldn't shake. In the morning, I picked up Serioga, my partner. We drove off. We climbed onto the roof. Without hesitation, I clipped myself to the railing with a carabiner. Serioga grunted, but said nothing. He didn't clip himself in, even though he was required to do so for safety reasons. We started lowering the camera. Sergei was in charge. I was feeding the cable. No, there can't be anything there. Something's dangling. The mold on the walls now reached all the way up to the 11th floor. Sergei wondered aloud what the hell was going on. I kept quiet. I just repeated to myself like a mantra. We won't go below the 7th floor, and we didn't go. because it was already waiting for us. It had set an ambush right on the 7th floor. I couldn't see the screen, but I understood immediately. Seryoga screamed. A wild, helpless scream. The cable was yanked out of my hands as if a car had grabbed it. My glove saved my hands. Otherwise, my skin would have been torn off. And at that very moment, I heard it coming from the ventilation. A sloshing sound, as if bones were being stirred in a bucket of mud. Gurgling, and a scream. Hollow, like a jet plane taking off, picking up speed. In seconds, it went from the womb to a scream. I jumped back. Seryoga turned around, and then the shaft exploded. The rain canopy was torn off and thrown away like a candy wrapper. Sticky, stinking, trembling black ribbons shot out of the black hole as if a shadow was tearing the fabric of reality. I screamed, probably at the top of my lungs. I couldn't hear myself. And the face, that face, floated to the surface of this sticky mass. It wasn't looking at me. It was looking at Seryoga. A black ribbon, like a translucent oil film, wrapped around his body. He didn't even have time to finish his sentence. He rose into the air and disappeared. He folded in half and was sucked into the ventilation system, into a hole that a person couldn't crawl through. He was just sucked in. I was hit in the chest. I flew over the railing and fell off the roof. The last thing I remember is the darkening sky, the safety belt around my waist, and then everything disappeared. Consciousness returned with a sudden, sharp pain. I felt no fear, only cold clarity. I was hanging on the safety rope, about 15 meters above the ground, and damn it, it held. Old, rusty piece of junk, but it held. Like a climber, using the rope and the wall, I climbed back onto the roof, shaking. There was a black spot, 3 meters in diameter, centered where the shaft had been. No blood, just the stench. And silence. I took off my overalls right there in the attic and stayed in my t-shirt and sweatpants. I went downstairs, got in the car, drove to school, picked up Nastya. The math teacher gave me a strange look. I just mumbled something about family circumstances. At home, I said we'd stay for a week. I called work and quit. I threw out my SIM card. In the garbage chute. Someone rang the doorbell a couple of times. I didn't answer. I didn't even move. I called the head teacher, explained that Nastya was still at home, and picked up her homework. I only went out to the store. Almost 2 weeks. Everything was quiet. I even started to hope. But yesterday my daughter woke me up and asked, "Dad, who's knocking on the wall?" That's how it was. Someone was knocking. That was yesterday. But that client said it had been knocking for a week before it started. So I have a little time. So I saw the traces left behind over a whole week. That means she's crawling. It must be that jumpsuit. I washed it recently. Apparently, the slime residue is like a beacon. She can sense it. She can smell it. 2 weeks, through basements, through mine shafts, across the city. After me. Today I'll set traps in the bathroom. I'll buy my friend Saiga all the ammunition, everything I've got. Because tomorrow, she'll get me.